Welcome to a new episode of our weekly web series, Science in Context. Recent publications looked at infectious diseases and their link to agricultural food production and ecological crises. I'm Sabine, and joining me today is Dr. Kris Murray. Kris, can you explain how infectious diseases and agriculture are linked?
There's been, a very long history of association between agriculture and infectious diseases. And some of the reasons for this include the things that we do when we create agricultural land, such as altering water availability. And we also change radically the natural ecosystems that in some cases would favour disease-carrying species. And then we have exposure of vulnerable human populations in those areas. For example, in a recent paper, we found that after controlling for the usual confounding factors, such as wealth, populations living in or near agriculture in Southeast Asia may be up to twice as likely to be infected by a range of pathogens. And the strongest links in that case were found with crop monocultures, such as palm oil and rubber.
Your research highlights the impact of agricultural land use on childhood malaria specifically. What are your main findings?
What we wanted to do is see whether we could find any association between agricultural land use in sub-Saharan Africa and children. So we combined a remotely sensed land cover data set with a really large geo-referenced malaria data set, including about 24,000 children across 12 countries. And what we found was that there's an increased risk of childhood malaria in areas where you have rain-fed cropland, particularly in rural areas, and irrigated cropland closer to urban areas, and then of course still an association with some natural land cover. But really interestingly, what we found is when you have a mix of those land cover types, so some natural vegetation within croplands, it could actually reduce the risk of malaria.
You also write about infectious diseases being further related to ecological crises such as global warming and mass species extinction. What does this mean for policy and decision makers?
The impacts that we're having on the planet, including land use for agriculture and climate, can catalyse new infectious disease risks. There are often competing interests across, even within government, individual ministries. For example, agriculture has one objective, health has another, and the Department of Natural Resources may have another. And what's really important is that we move to a point where we've got much more joined up decision and policy making.